Welcome to the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show. I'm Tony Arterburn. I am your host, one of your hosts. I'm joined via Skype with Kinsey, host of Fringe Files. She's always the better part of this program. The the research, the deep dives come from Kinsey. We're going to hear from her in just a second. I want to tell you guys that it is the 4th of January. This is the first show of 2022 for the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show here live on Aftermath.fm. You can also find us on the technocratic supported platforms. They shall not be named because they are censoring. I even debated whether I was just going to go on Aftermath. That may be a thing. But stay tuned, folks. If you're finding us on some of these DARPA funded the technocratic platforms, stick around. We'll see. I'll let you know if I'm gonna make that permanent jump. I'll let you know. But it's going to be an interesting year. We're going to talk a little bit about what's in store for 2022. I titled the show AU in 2022, which AU is the on the periodic table. That's the symbol for gold. Of course, I think it's going to be a lot more than gold in 2022. But Kinsey, you wanted to talk about build beef better. What's the story behind that?
It's beef back better.
Beef
Tony.
back better. Okay.
A whole new plan.
A whole new plan.
That's actually what it sounds like. So I'm sure most people have heard the little clip of Biden talking about beef prices for a pound of beef being around $5, which before this whole, what do we call it, scamdemic started, that was not your cost of beef per pound. And there's multiple reasons why this is happening. You know, the easiest thing to say is how much money we have printed, which you talk about very often, so I don't need to remind people here. But I think more importantly than that, on how much we've printed, is not allowing certain individuals out there being able to work. Surprisingly, guys, there are people out there that want to work, but whenever it comes to your meat packing industries, they had some very tight rules during all of this, and I would say they have to raise the price. If they want to keep the lights on and you want to keep meat coming to the table, the prices needed to be raised. And on top of that, just printing did not help.
It's funny how that works. You know, when the cost of something goes up and then the buying power of your currency declines. You want me to play that clip really quick? I got Biden pulled up. You want me to put up on the screen?
Yeah, play it.
I'll put it up on the screen. We'll play a little bit. It's about 28 seconds. Stand by.
But I was sitting in my kitchen yesterday, and there's a sunroom off the kitchen, and my wife was there with her sister and a good friend named Marianne. And she was saying, do you realize it's over $5 for a pound of hamburger meat? $5? Well, this is partly, the pound of beef today costs $5 compared to less than $4 before the pandemic. But I was sitting in my
Well, never forget that COVID did it, not the central banks, not their poor planning, not the fact that they shut down the supply chain. None of that caused it, right? It's only that COVID. It's the disease that did it, and that's what we hide behind. Yeah.
Do you
Well,
notice how confused he sounds even in that 20 something seconds? Like after he even says beef, he looks over someone and you can see all the question marks. Has anybody ever seen the meme with the guy, all the question marks around him after he mentions beef? He needed to make sure he was correct there. So this is the man that we have as president. Really strong figure, as we can all see here. Great representation of our nation, is it not?
yes, and this is I assume they'll continue their deer in the headlights look as they carry out the Great Reset. They're going to look at people and say,
Mhm.
well, these are just crazy times. This pandemic's really causing these supply chain breakdowns, when you're like, no, you are. Well, that
You are.
the
Yeah.
dollar, everything keeps getting more expensive, Kenzie. We really can't understand it. Why are things getting more expensive? Well, because the dollar buys less. Why does it buy less? We always go back to fiat currency and printing to infinity and beyond, as you like to say. And
Infinity and beyond. If they took this entire nation, like let's say that we've done what has been done in history before, not here necessarily in the US, but let's say that they took every asset that you owned, which I would never call for that, guys, but let's just pretend here that they were like, all right, we're going to take all of your assets. It still would not be enough to pay off the debt. Tony, if they took everything that we had, excluding, well, no, even throw the billionaires in there, I think including them, the entire net worth of this nation could not pay back what is owed.
right. Well, it wasn't it. It was Janet Yellen, head of the Treasury, former head of the Fed, that said recently, they're talking about doing this great green new reset. I don't. They're combining all the terms. It's all for the same thing. But she said it was going to take like 150 trillion to go to net zero for carbon. And I thought, wait a minute, 150 trillion? Is there even that amount of wealth recorded? And of course, I guess in
No.
some way that there is, but it'd have to be all the governments and all the assets and all the people and everything. So, and they're just talking about doing that in the next 10 years. And I'm going, you guys have lost your collective mind. I mean, it's so untethered from reality. It's beyond clown show. It's demonic. I'm just saying, and they send out these stooges. And so you get the meat puppets, you get the standard build back better types like Biden, and he'll just look at you like, it's crazy. Price of beef going up. It's like before the pandemic, it was like $4. And I'm thinking, yeah, like, Joe, like go back, think
Yeah,
about,
he hasn't done his own shopping in God knows how long.
no, it's like when George H.W. Bush was running for president in 92. I remember this when I was a kid. Like he had no idea what a gallon of milk costs or a loaf of bread. He was so out of touch. He's just part of the elite class, and he's going to run for president. He's got to get amongst the people. And look,
Well, and this is exactly why the problems that we face, Tony, they have no idea how to fix it. Like on paper, they think, oh, this will work. But and maybe it sounds good on paper if you're not very knowledgeable of how things truly run. Maybe it looks good. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt of like maybe they're just not smart enough to figure it out. But I don't know. I think that there's more to it, because you only need a certain portion of the population to go, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good common sense idea, right? They like to use that word too. It's just common sense. And you get that narrative floating around, and, you kind of make the people feel like it might have been their idea. And at the end of the day, it just kind of makes our situation worse. What actually just sparked that thought is I forgot to send you a follow-up video to what I call the Beef Back Better. Biden was actually recently talking about, how they're going to fix this problem. And I can't quote it exactly, but it had to do with meat prices and controlling meat prices. What I hear
oh,
whenever I what I think when I hear that automatically is if people knew the amount of subsidizing that happened in our farming anyway, I think that that's the correct word. And now to subsidize even more, it really puts a knot in my stomach. It sounds like a good idea for the farmers, right? Because they do deserve a fair price for their meat. But Tony, when's the last time we actually got to have true just market value on something? Like, let the market sort itself out. If we guarantee that farmers are going to get X amount of money per pound on any kind of meat that's out there, where is the government getting that money from? They only have two options, and that is either to print more, which then makes your dollar more worthless, or to collect it from you in taxing. And we all know that there's not enough taxes in the world they could put on people to pay for the kinds of operations that they are trying to run. So either way, at the end of the day, we're still left in a worse position. You know, some of these ideas that sound good are not good.
Well, this goes back to the 1930s. This is under the New Deal with FDR, when they started
Mhm.
paying farmers not to grow crops. That's I think that's the first time in recorded history any government had done that. They were paying people not to produce so that they could stabilize prices. And of course, you go to the
Mhm.
1970s with Nixon's price controls. That all blew up in everybody's because we went off the gold standard, and we had a problem with our trade deficit started to creep in the early 1970s,
Mhm.
and then the loss of purchasing power. So yeah, they tried to
Well,
scramble and do price control. They may do. You're right. That's a great
well,
segue.
we're still doing it. I know that we do it on a lot of grains today, which is why the cost of grain, which whether you're feeding yourself or what do these farmers have to feed their animals? The grain, which costs more for the farmers to buy. And it all gets all messed up. See, this is how this tangled web works together. And speaking of your price controls, later on, I think it was quite a couple of years later on, did, does anybody here know about the massive amount? Hopefully, we still don't have this, but the massive amount. We have a stockpile of cheese, and this was done because of price controls and the subsidizing. Farmers were guaranteed X amount for their cheese, and because they were guaranteed that X amount, we ended up producing way too much American cheese. And there was no other option. Like, you couldn't put it onto the markets because then it would have to drop the price of the cheese. And the government just ended up buying this massive, I mean, a historical amount of American cheese. And it's just the whole thing is silly.
Yeah,
I think about that often. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's the top-down control, like central control. And it's
Yes.
never worked. I mean, that's what you do in a communistic society. And so many of the planks of the Communist Manifesto carried out under our elites. One of I think Marx, the one of the first planks was a central bank, and the other was a graduated income tax. And there's also price controls and control of land, and that's all been implemented. And this is just in our modern era. People are going to have to get used to it, and that's why we do this show. That's why we talk about the alternatives to the Luciferian bankster note, also known as fiat dollars. We talk about gold, silver, crypto. We got some articles for you here that we're going to go over, Kenzie and I. I don't even know if we'll take a break during the show, but I've got at least 5 things to go over today. And you talked about paying off the debt. Jim Chambers in the chat says they have no interest in paying off the debt. They will simply default and make a new fiat. He's absolutely right. Unfortunately, that is our fate. They will go to, I think our debt's I think we're functioning at like 120% of GDP right now. And no
Hmm.
modern nation state has ever survived that. I mean, Zimbabwe comes to mind when, they just recently adopted Bitcoin, but Zimbabwe had that like $1 trillion notes. And so the people are going to get used to hyperinflation is such a devastating future event. It's something that everybody needs to prepare for, and it won't happen exactly like the Weimar style republic. I don't know exactly how it will carry out. All I know is that you start seeing it creep in, like we've been talking about with the bumps of $1.25 tree and Dollar General and all the 99-cent stores that are gone. But talk a little bit about the dollar slice of pizza in New York. You were mentioning that today on the phone with me.
I was. So there's another YouTuber that I watch, and they were just covering the cost of living in New York City for a week. And I just tend to like those kinds of videos. But what I found out today is that your dollar slice of pizza in New York City, which you would think is $1, it's not. It's $3.50. Given it's a pretty decent sized pizza, I just still would not want to pay that much for it. And the YouTuber there actually put in, if we were to do 4% inflation for the next 40 years or so, your pizza would eventually end up costing around $25 for the dollar pizza. And we know that inflation is growing at a faster pace than 4%. There's a lot of fudging of the numbers going on. You can obviously tell just in your meat prices, and groceries that you're buying, and parts that you might need, and home things. I mean, the cost is, I'm not going to say to the point of outrageous, but it really makes you take a step back. Even if you're living in a pretty decent household, you've got a pretty decent income, you really need to take a step back. And I'm not saying cut out all the luxuries in your life, but if there are things that you need, I would get those things that you need before the things that you really want. Just judging on the direction that this is going now, Tony, a lot of us have blind spots. Let's look at where those blind spots are. Gold, silver, it's a great base as far as if things get out of control, if you lose your job, if an emergency comes up. Cryptocurrencies, that's just another good spot to look into. But, there's more than that. There's more to that than just investing, in things that you might speculate on. I do it more for safety, not so much the speculation.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring it up that way, because I was looking at the selection of articles that I picked out for tonight and some of the ones you sent, and I'm thinking it's hard to do like a breakdown. Like, we know the history of gold, we know why you should buy gold or silver, right? And so these markets are it's kind of silly, because every week it changes. Like, you'll see, oh, well, gold fell a little bit, and it fell by 5% because the dollar strengthened. I'm like, no, it didn't. And the dollar, they can't strengthen. It's impossible. You'd have to raise interest rates. You'd have to be, for like, just like they do with these meme coins and cryptocurrency, you have to like burn your tokens. They'd have to shrink the supply, which they can't do. So the dollar really doesn't really strengthen. It's just your perception of it, or the market's perception of it. So when we do these stories on gold and silver, I mean, yeah, we can, I'll give you some inside information on, like, hey, how supply chain's going, what's the lead time on getting deliveries for precious metals, because that's always different. But nothing is really fundamentally different than it was last year, except for the fact that we're another year closer to, I think, a reckoning of the fiat currency system and metals. What do you think about that? I mean, I know I've got a couple of headlines, but what do you think about that analysis? I mean, yeah, we'll give you some breakdowns, but it's not going to change until, people always ask me, like, when is there going to be a significant bump in the price of gold? And I'm like, well, you have to wait for the dollar to give up the ghost in a lot of ways. And I don't want that to happen, because it's going to hurt a lot of people. But that is where the dollar is competing with gold, and they use that manipulation. It's very complicated, but they use the central banks and they use the bullion houses. I got to get the author. The guy that did that book. I'll see if I can get it. It's just a detailed book on how that works, and he's been working his whole life to get the information out. So I'll forget, his name escapes me, but this is a pivotal time, because I think we're kind of like in a it's like a calm, and I feel like this is before the storm of, I think 2022 is going to be a significant year for economic chaos. And
Oh, absolutely. And they'll blame everything else in the world. They can blame this virus. They can blame, or how about the new one, Florona? That's what they call it. I called it COVID's like ghetto stepchild. Florona has showed up. That's flu and the Rona together, if you didn't know. So apparently that's starting to sweep
well, the
nations.
flu took a
So
year off.
we've got that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
and
went to
they can
Barbados.
blame climate, whatever they want to blame, but it is slowly. Something is happening. It is very slow. I feel what you're saying about the calm before the storm. It's definitely coming. And you know what's really funny about that is, like, before we started the show, as you called, I was listening to Adele's Skyfall. And that is like my theme song for like just watching the world fall apart around you. I think that's 2022. Adele Skyfall is 2022.
Yeah, it's going to be weird, and I think there's going to be some adjustments and some minor resets. The stock market will not look the same after this year. There's going to be a lot, and I don't have specifics on that. Just gut level research, and there's people ask me, and I always tell them, look at two indicators for a massive shift in the economy. And I'm going to put this article up on the screen because it goes with that. This is the year of the super billionaire, says Zero Hedge. You're the super billionaire. World's richest earned more than $1 trillion in 2021. So before you have significant market crashes, adjustments, there's always giant concentrations of wealth. This goes all the way back throughout the history of mankind, Kenzie, as you know. There's always massive concentrations of wealth followed by some sort of political or actual revolution, and then wealth redistribution, and then it reconcentrates again. This is the back and forth that always happens throughout history. But the difference now is that the concentrations are so high and the wealth disparity is unlike anything we've ever seen. So I look to key factors as I'll read a little bit of this article, but the key factors that you need to know about 2021. It broke two records. It broke the record for governments ordering gold, governments and central banks ordering gold for themselves, for their stockpiles. And number two, it broke the all-time record of CEOs selling their own stock. So they know that something was on the horizon. Now they want you to be invested in what the mainstream says and whatever the CNBCs of the world and the talking heads, buy into that reality. It's always a never-ending go. We're going to have a great time. Just get into the casino. We're in a bullish market. I'm like, oh, you're in a bullish market with crushed supply lines. Okay, let me see what you're smoking, man, because I got to get some of that. Look at this article. This is Tesla billionaire Elon Musk captivated the financial press during Q4 by selling a chunk of his shares in the electric vehicle car maker after his Twitter followers, and he asked his Twitter followers whether he should sell or not. What a great out for that. He's like, hey, should I sell my stock? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, okay, see, I was told to by my Twitter followers, a bunch of bots.
All started with Elizabeth Warren. So anybody that's really mad at that, it really started with her. And I kind of got a kick out of how all of this went, to be honest.
This is according to Bloomberg. Yeah, he what did he call her? Like a super Karen or something like that?
Something. I just remember she was really mad about the fact that he was going to escape all of these taxes, and he sold his stock, so much of it, so that he will pay more in taxes than anyone in this nation has ever paid in one single go.
And this is the thing about the billionaires. There's a certain class thing there. Most of them, most of the billionaires support socialism and all the things that would keep someone from ever competing with them, which is one of the funnest conspiracies I like to expose people to, especially when they come from the standard left-right. I'm like, no. The richest people in the world fund this. They love socialism. Yeah. They love communism. This is according to Bloomberg. For the wealthiest people on the planet, 2021 was the year of enormous gains, extreme losses, and unprecedented scrutiny. Well, I guess I don't know if it's scrutiny, but definitely the billionaires were treated to the lion's share of the fallout from and the windfall from the lockdowns when they took out the American middle class. So it's not just soaring equity markets, rising valuations of everything from mansions to crypto to commodities boosted the collective fortune of the world's 500 richest people by more than $1 trillion as the rest of the world struggled with the second year of the COVID pandemic. This is the most egregious part of all of this. It's not so. I mean, look, they They locked down the country. They did the controlled demolition of the middle class. And you and I have been taught this last year. We were just saying, look, hey folks, look at what they're doing. Look at what the governments and the banks are doing. They're not buying more stocks. They're not doing any of that. They're not thinking that everything's okay. They're bracing for Armageddon. And I mean, I think that's where I am right now, just looking at the playing field, looking at 2022 from on a financial spectrum. I'm just doing everything I can to brace for what's next. And again, I don't take that lightly. I'm not giving people financial advice or anything. I'm just saying, look, there's something on the horizon. You got to look at key indicators. And if you're listening there ought to be some value of you listening to programs like this and listening to me and Kenzie talk for an hour, because, when you're faced with having this information ahead of time, you can help yourself and make adjustments. I think you'll be smarter if you do make those adjustments for 2022, because a lot of people are going to get hurt really bad in the next 12 to 18 months.
That is true. And this, going over this article, I want to ask a question, I guess, to you in the audience as well. Do you think that there's the possibility that subconsciously there are people out there paying outrageous prices for things because it's not so much of a FOMO at this point? Somewhere subconsciously, they realize that dollar is becoming more worthless. So anytime we see this throughout history, you always see, the fine jewelry, the land, the houses, cars, whatever it might be. These things go up in price. I'll throw art in there as well. Art is another thing that people tend to get their hands on because they want to carry value over whatever's about to come their way. And I almost wonder if on a subconscious level, is that the case? Or will some people just make out possibly lucky or absolutely wrecking their lives because they're just trying to throw money at anything else? You don't want to save it. And that's not exactly the mentality that Americans have grown up on for a long time. It's not about saving. And today, if anybody's telling you to save, I've talked about it before. There are certain things that you should save for, and you should have a goal and get there as quick as you can. That might mean picking up some part-time jobs because your savings are depleting. There is no point. No point at all. Tony, on the news the other day, there's some random lady, the talking heads, right, telling me that I should open up a savings account because earning 0.01% is better than earning nothing. No, at the end of the day, if I put $100 in there by next year, I am in the negative. It's going to buy me less. Why would I throw money into a savings account right now? Why would I hold money under my mattress right now? It's losing value just sitting there.
This is being smart about where you put your savings too, because you got to look at looking at inflation, looking at how that's going to devalue, where you put, either it's a company or the stock or something like that. You have to be very careful, even cryptocurrencies. I put this article up on the screen. This one I sent you earlier, just in that vein, along that line of logic, Kenzie. There's an article on Zero Hedge about Peter Schiff from shiftgold.com. He put up an article. 2021 was a year of peak speculation. So kind of going in that same direction. It says 2021 goes into the history books. Peter Schiff looks back over what he calls a year of peak speculation. Of course, the big story of the year was inflation. And, Peter is interesting. I obviously don't agree with everything he puts out, but he's been at it a long time, and his dad too. So he's somebody that I respect, at least, from his opinion comes from research and from life experience and running a company. But it really seemed like there was this crazy amount of speculation into a lot of dead assets last year. What do you think about, what comes to mind when you hear peak speculation?
I absolutely have to agree with this. And what caused me to mention the subconscious level of thinking to people is the folks that are my age. So I'm 25 years old. I'm not the youngest, but I'm not the oldest, right? We don't trust the government We don't trust the dollar. But most of these kids, I can promise you, I went to school, right? And I can promise you that it's not great. You do not get a good understanding of history. You get absolutely no education on economics. This is lost within us, but people know not to trust it. And I have to agree with what Peter is saying here. I'll just bring up NFTs because that's a great place to go to. Do I think that it's worth looking into some of them? Absolutely. The future of it, I see things going there. But one of the co-founders of Ethereum, Tony, actually dropped almost $3 million on what they call a serum vial, so they could change their Bored Ape from Bored Ape Yacht Club to a mutant ape. And that was almost $3 million just for the serum to change the ape, the look of the ape. Is that not peak speculation?
It sounds like decadence. That's what it really, it's like, you have all that fiat currency floating around from, and the stock market fuels the speculation. Even the crypto sphere, because of the massive gains, has fueled that. And that's also contributing to some of the issues in inflation as well. So
absolutely,
I think Peter's right. I mean, to just kind of distill this entire article, I mean, he's talking about, I think there will be 2022 will be a year of recovering. It'll be a year of a hangover from the last couple of years, because there's been so much pumped in that, and it's unhealthy, and it's destroying the very root of what was left of our free market. And that's why I'm telling people every week, hey, do your own research, get into something that's an asset, look at the pitfalls of being involved in the casino, because there's just too much volatility. You have zombie corporations run by zombie banks, which can't be good. There's a lot of zombies on Wall Street, ladies and gentlemen, and you don't want anything to do with those zombies. They've some of them been around since 2008. So some of these big corporations have been around, and these banks that were just propped up and left there. So you have to be careful. There still hasn't been an accounting for 2008. So I happen to agree with people like Gerald Celente, who says this is going to be the Greatest Depression. And I don't want to be an alarmist, but that's what I think we're going to go through.
We need to remember that a good bit of what caused that depression was people being over leveraged and everybody and their mama wanting to get into something. Where are we today? We are 10,000 times. I don't know the exact number. It might be more than that, but we are way over leveraged. A lot of these quote unquote assets that people are buying, they're not buying it with hard-earned cash. They're not doing that. They are using debt. This is scary because whenever the web starts to untangle, the entire thing just falls out from underneath itself.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be so rapid or so bad if it wasn't like that.
Here's something that Peter put in this podcast, in this article. It says, with supply dropping, we needed the demand to go down, even if it resulted in recession. Instead, the government made things worse. Instead of people reducing their consumption along with their production, they wanted to consume more. They were spending more because of the asinine monetary and fiscal stimulus that took place during the pandemic. Isn't that, it's very apt and very strange at the same time. Like they dumped the money into the economy, but they also shut down a great portion of the supply chain, which caused the price of goods to go up, but people had the money to spend. So instead of fixing the supply chain with the funds that were dumped in, if you're following me here, they just left the broken system in place and then asked for more products. So that makes the prices continue to go up. And I don't know where that stops.
Infinity and beyond.
Well, that's good. That's good to know that you're a constant there. I don't have to worry, but that's a really good assessment. And, Peter is right I think he's wrong about Bitcoin. But look, in the long run, who knows? I think he's wrong about crypto, but I think he's right about the spending and the fiscal discipline. And you can't consume your way into prosperity. You have to, at some
Mm-hmm.
point, you have to make things. At some point, you have to develop them. And the United States has been well, it's been exporting its its manufacturing and getting rid of that for many decades and turning its back on what made it great in the first place. All right.
Oh, we will be our own downfall. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It will be an implosion.
Let's look at this. This is, going over the. I have to go over at least one gold. I didn't find any good silver articles, which I want to talk to you about at the end of this piece because this is our metals portion of the show. This is Market Watch, and this is what I'm talking about. This is the title of the article. It says gold recoups half of its Monday loss on a disappointing U.S. data and Omicron uncertainty. See, last week it was gold dips because the dollar strengthened, and I'm like, well, which one is it? I mean, it's just it doesn't make any sense. Why we're at like $1,800 gold is beyond me because that's with inflation the way it is. With $3 from a dollar pizza to three and something, $3 and change. I think gold should be a lot higher than it is, but hey, that's just me. Gains for gold come despite strength in treasury yields. Gold futures climbed on Tuesday, finding some support despite strength in treasury yields to recoup. It's just over half of what it lost the day earlier, after data showed slower than expected growth among U.S. manufacturers in December. Yeah, this is I think we might start seeing a more of a trend here. And you notice that the key to this headline is uncertainty with Omicron and all the rest, even though I don't even want to get into that. I've covered you. If you want to hear me bash the scamdemic COVID-1984 agenda, you can tune into the Arterburn radio transmission. That's like this whole show's on it. But this is nonsense. You've got the Omicron uncertainty. Well, the uncertainty has nothing to do with Omicron. It really doesn't even have to do with much of the data. It has to do with us not having an economy that's functioning, and you're not gonna you're not gonna build that back better. Okay, that's should be first and foremost, but that's not what these politicians are all about. Any thoughts on what's going on with gold?
Oh gosh, I always hate this question
I
because
have to ask
I think
you.
that I know. I think that people need to continue, or I don't want to say need, but if you have the means to, I would say that having a little bit of gold there is not a bad idea. And I know that we are seeing just kind of weird price fluctuations with this right now. But I think Tony and I both know that there's a game that is being played here, right? And if you understand the game, then you have a better chance at winning this.
Right.
So I continue to buy gold, and that's in the form of coins, bars, jewelry. Whenever I look for jewelry, though, just this is my thing. You could be different. I do choose 22 karat and above, so 22 or 24 karat gold. Very hard to come by, but it's just easier if you're ever going to need to sell it to do the math and everything else on it. We know how great this country is at math. So it's kind of easier. It's also easier to break apart if you needed to. Just, if you have the means to do it, I would say buy it. We're playing a really big game right now, a very dangerous game right now as far as the manipulation goes in the gold and silver markets. And we know that the dollar is not strong. I'm not saying throw all your eggs into one basket. That is not the point of this show. Absolutely not. But you've got to start somewhere. And if you haven't started yet, gold and silver is a very good base for savings, like real savings.
I'm starting
go
to
and pull up
see.
the chart.
Yeah, I'm starting to see more calls on converting IRAs and 401ks into gold and silver IRAs.
And that's the uncertainty kicking in.
Yeah.
Right. The only part of that article headline that was correct is uncertainty. And older generations out there, they have been through some booms and busts before. So they've really got to start thinking about where should I put what I've earned? I mean, basically, this is what you've earned over the course of life, right? By putting in hard work. And you want to protect that. Do the best that you can to protect that. And I don't think that people should just stop at an IRA personally, Tony. I think that having physical gold, like in your home somewhere, or just buried on your property somewhere, this is important because you can move it quickly. No one can lock you out from that. It's yours. You can move it anytime that you want to. So there's freedom there.
I agree
and
with
I
that.
think that's a big part of this show, right? Is just being, I mean, both of us are doing the best that we can to be as sustainable as possible for ourselves, as independent as possible as we can be for ourselves, because we know that this system is going to go up in flames. And what I mean by that, guys, is oddly enough, me and Tony both live off grid. We're both in kind of different situations as far as that goes, but I think that both of us kind of have, goals in mind on where we want to get to with our properties. So it's not just about investing in different markets, whether it be gold, silver, crypto, stocks, whatever. It's investing in ourselves.
Yes.
So while you're investing in yourself, it is very, very easy to go and pick up a couple of coins of silver, right? You don't even have to buy a whole ounce.
No, you don't. You can get
do that.
fractional gold at a good price. I mean, you can go to wisewolf.gold and contact me. I can find something. I started buying. I bought some 1/20th ounce pieces that were, I think they're Austrian Philharmonics, but they're 1/20th instead of the 1/10th. And so there's good deal. You can get that size fractional gold without paying crazy premiums. You just have to know where to look. And I buy it a little bit at a time. For Christmas and the holidays, there was some gold purchased for the family, and I was giving advice on, hey, you should put a coin in a bezel, get some pre-1933 gold, and I neither can confirm nor deny, but I think some of that was done for Christmas, and I think other people should too. It's just, to me, I'm seeing an increase in calls on that. So when you're tuning into shows like this, you get a little bit of the open source intel, because you're never going to be, Kenzie and I are never going to be behind a paywall. We pay other sources for some inside information. If we find that necessary, we'll bring it onto the show. But really what this is just giving you a little bit of inside track. I mean, I was looking at the trading floor today. Gold, ladies and gents, is not out of stock. There's demand for it, but not as high as you would think. The other metal that I want to ask Kenzie about is silver. Now, you came in at the beginning of 2021, and you were working with some other groups and the Wall Street Bets folks and Wall Street Silver and all that, and you watched that rise. What do you think is going on? I can't find any significant articles on silver or what's going on with silver, other than what I'm seeing myself, which is premiums are still really high on an ounce of silver. So if you're looking at the spot price, like today is $23, buying from me, you're probably going to be somewhere between the $27, $28 range. What do you feel like is happening with silver, Kenzie?
I know that it's more manipulated, JP Morgan just got in trouble again. This should not be an odd thing to say for anyone. They just got slapped with another fine, and it doesn't mean a darn thing to them. With how huge they are, it's hardly a slap on the wrist. This is more like a kiss on the cheek. So it's not hidden anymore. There is suppression of price here. And the oddest thing to me is knowing that a majority of countries that are mining this silver have such strict COVID laws. Well, in the meantime, you've got this new rise of people that want to buy as much silver as they can, which I actually think that is somewhat dangerous. We might have time to talk about that on this show or maybe another one. But it makes absolutely no sense, because if the demand is so high, from both retail investors and from companies that need it to make their products. You want to talk about this Green New Deal, you're going to need a boatload, how about 10 boatloads of silver for this Green New Deal? And it doesn't make any sense. So, you could actually invest in silver from two different angles. I want to invest in this to protect my wealth and it be the base of my wealth. Or I want to invest in this on a speculative type form, because I know that so many companies need it to make their products. There's a limited supply out there. We're having disruptions in supply chains, and this Green New Deal that's coming, you're going to need a ton of silver for it. So there's the speculative side as well on, hey, this should go up. just based on what we need to use it for.
Yeah, it seems like common sense. I still think
Absolutely.
it's the most underrated asset as far. I mean, because it's, silver is a industrial metal and a precious metal. It's got so many uses. I mean, even in the age of pandemics and the strains of bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. I mean, silver is the medicine of choice for a lot of those treatments. So I mean, you get so many different things: thermoconductive, solar, like I said, medicine, monetary uses, jewelry. It's not going away. There's so many things silver can do, and I see it's just cheap right now, even with premiums tacked on it. I think it's still very cheap, and you have to go really looking through the lens of the dollar being weak. um, yeah, it's 28 bucks an ounce, and that's high-end retail, silver, but 28 bucks an ounce with this dollar, buying a pure ounce of silver, it just seems to me, it seems very low, and that's just from your humble
Hmm.
host and and owner of Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. I think it's pretty low, and I think it's affordable.
Well, I mean, let's go back to when there was a real supply chain kink and retailers were scared that they were going to run out of silver because of Wall Street silver. Let's go back to that. Silver shot up where you couldn't get it for under 30 bucks an ounce, right? I saw on eBay over and over and over again, people were paying $50 an ounce. So let's just say that something silly like this happens again, where people are willing to pay outrageous premiums because they're FOMOing into something. Maybe you should have a little extra set aside just for when that day comes. I mean, if somebody offered me $50 for an ounce of silver right now, I don't know. I might take it. I might not. I mean, I'd probably rather hold it, but I don't know. Depending on the timing, I'd be like, wow, that's ridiculous. Let me sell a little bit of this.
Do you see that happening? Do you see that there will be some sort of craze for the old, commodities like precious metals? Do you think there will be some push that will drive the physical price up?
I definitely think that there's the possibility of this happening just because we do know that there's the collapsing dollar. They're actually being a little bit more transparent about that on the media. It's not a hardcore thing yet. But Tony, imagine the day when the script is flipped and the mainstream media is actually hammering into the heads of people on inflation is absolutely out of control. Your dollar is worthless. I think that we're going to see a battle kind of between precious metals and cryptocurrency. And this is why I think that you should be in both of these things, because we don't know which direction this is going to go. It is so important to be diversified, but not so overly diversified that you saturate yourself and, any amount of losses or gains doesn't really do anything for you. So diversification is very important, but actually have a goal in mind into what you're looking for and why you're getting into, these avenues that you're choosing to get into. I think that it would be absolutely silly not to own any gold or silver. And I think it's absolutely crazy not to own any crypto. That's just where I stand on things.
Next week, what do you say we do the 2022 predictions from Fringe, from Kinsey, on coins, crypto coins to look at, and of course, your favorite denominations of gold and silver. Just maybe your top 3 picks for coins to look at, for cryptos to look at in 2022. How about that? Next week.
All right. Yeah, we'll look into it. We'll,
I'm putting
I
you on the
hate when
spot.
Tony puts me on the spot like that.
You have to. It's on live. We're on live radio. You have to agree to it. So in that, being diversified, that's exactly right. And you can tell this is not an infomercial because, look, you can purchase crypto with me, but it's a lot harder. And so I just tend to tell people to go to an exchange, or, you can use one of my ATMs if you're in one of the areas that the ATMs happen to be in. But this is more or less of a thought experiment. It's just being on the right side of history. Here's Forbes. I brought this up on the screen, the Forbes article I sent you. Why a billionaire Bitcoin and Ethereum skeptic suddenly just flipped and made a wild crypto price prediction. Now you're starting to see, and before when we close out, we'll talk El Salvador. We're starting to see this shift where a lot of these old money hats and all the rest, they started coming into crypto, which is interesting because you start to see it as the stock market, the the air's coming out of it, out of the bubble, and I think they're going to need lifeboats and other areas to play in. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, and cryptocurrency have won over some surprising naysayers in recent years as the crypto market price has exploded. The Bitcoin price, after surging through much of 2021, has begun this year on a downward trend despite a flurry of bullish 2022 crypto price prediction. However, now Wall Street billionaire Thomas Peterffy, did I say that right? Peterffy? Peterffy.
Maybe.
Who once warned Bitcoin futures could destabilize the real economy, has said investors should buy a small amount of cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin or Ethereum in case the dollar, quote, goes to hell, and predicted the Bitcoin price could eventually hit 1 million. Okay. Well, so there, not that I follow billionaires really for their financial advice. A lot of them are just, kind of sociopathic people who use government handouts. But hey, when they say something that makes sense, I'll put them up. I'll put the article up. What do you think about that? You think you're going to see more of these types of people that once were massive skeptics? Do you think Warren Buffett will buy some Bitcoin this year, Kenzie?
I actually think that Buffett will probably fall over in his grave before. Oh, dogs are barking.
He's got coon hounds. Uh-oh. Did I lose you, Kenzie?
No, we're good. I muted myself just temporarily. There.
Oh, okay.
They
Well, that's
probably
okay.
just see something outside.
Is Athena?
Yeah, it's both of them.
Oh, I love them. You have the best dogs. Almost as good as my dog. But
yeah, Buffett, I don't see that happening, but I do find it so interesting that, we've got some big names in the game that are coming over. And every time that this happens, this is telling me I'm a 50-50 person, Tony. We are either at the beginning of something just huge, which I do think is possible, or we are at the end for a moment. I don't think that crypto is ever going to die, but I do think that people need to be prepared at any time for 30 to 80% drops.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way of knowing how greatly some of these giant investors are out here, maybe even hedge funds secretly. There's no way of knowing, right? So just be prepared for huge drops. I do think it's important to always have a little bit of cash set aside, whether it be gold, silver, a stock, crypto. Have a little bit set aside in an account somewhere, just so if there is something massive, you're not having to be delayed on waiting to move some money around. You can just go in, get what you wanted at a good price, and move on. Feel happy about that.
Yeah, well, and this year too, I wanted to tell the audience, everybody you're finding us on the podcast channel or on Aftermath, Kenzie and I are going to have some great guests on for 2022. I've actually got a schedule lined up, looking at filling at least a couple of times a month. We'll have some guests over to talk about these various issues, people from backgrounds in precious metals or crypto or that space, or even talking about the monetary system. And this is going to be a great platform in 2022 to talk about the truth when it comes to the Luciferian bankster notes, the LBNs. We're going to get to the bottom of that, and of course try to get people some good information so they can protect themselves. All right, last story of the day, folks. This is something that Kenzie sent to me, and we talked about yesterday on my program. You were in the chat, and I noticed when I was live about this very thing. We're talking about El Salvador, and this is something to explore. Hundreds of Salvadorians say Bitcoin has vanished from their government-issued centralized Chivo wallets. Natural News is being reported that hundreds of people in El Salvador are unable to access Bitcoin in their centralized government-issued Chivo wallets. This is unconfirmed reports are circulating on Twitter. Now, this is where I start to wonder if this is some sort of opt to destabilize or to delegitimize. El Salvador is still standing alone. It's the only country in the world that adopted Bitcoin as legal tender at this point. Some others, you can still use it, but this is actual legal tender. I don't know. I'm just, after reading this article through before we went live, I'm skeptical on what this means. Although when you put a government in charge of anything, but you mentioned something too. Didn't the government give them Bitcoin to begin with? Like, didn't they get it for just being citizens?
Exactly, and that's what I have not been able to confirm yet, Tony, is I wanted to find out, is it the gifted Bitcoin that was taken from the accounts? See, we've got two different problems here. Some people's accounts have been like seized where they can't get in and out of it. And the other half is Bitcoin has been stolen from the people. I cannot confirm or deny if the government is taking the Bitcoin that they've gifted, or if they are just taking any Bitcoin that has been loaded into these wallets. Now, remember, guys, this is not like your personal wallet that is being raided. That can't be done if you were set up secured on a cold wallet somewhere. The problem here, and that I've had an issue with since this started, was hearing about these government wallets. They are doing the same thing in India. You can use crypto legally over there. It can be, I believe, legal tender over there. But the problem is that you have to have an account with the government. That means that you don't have control over this. This is worse to me than keeping your money in a bank. Don't ever trust the government with anything, even if it is something new and revolutionary, such as using Bitcoin as legal tender. I applaud that. But I have to say, I do not trust any government to hold your funds. That's dangerous. It's always been dangerous, and it always will be.
Always will be. Wise words there from Kenzie, host of Fringe Files. Kenzie, tell people where they can find you. I don't do this enough. You don't plug enough. You've got some other shows. You do other things. You don't just show up here.
I do. So Fringe Files on YouTube and Odyssey. I'm still working out some internet kinks, and I did let people know that I've been dealing with some personal things, but hopefully here very soon I should be back to normal. Dealt with suspension, dealt with internet issues, and then my personal things, but here soon we should be back to normal. YouTube and Odyssey is the place to find me, though.
Oh, awesome. I needed to tune into some. I missed some Fringe Files. I haven't tuned in a week or two at least. When's the last time you did a show?
A month.
Okay. Well, that's why I'm like, I usually get
on
reminded.
A 2-week suspension.
Okay. That explains a lot. Well, this is I'm always glad to have you here. And you join us here, folks, you're listening on aftermath.fm or anywhere podcasts are found. Kenzie and I, we work hard to get you at least one new show a week, and I sure appreciate her research and her being here, and all of you tuning in. I have a radio show here on aftermath.fm, 3 p.m. Central Time weekdays, called the Arterburn Radio Transmission, and we talk about everything. It's not, I throw in precious metals in there too, but there's politics and there's prepping and even paranormal stuff you can tune in. And of course, arterburn.news is my website if you want to know a little bit more about Tony Arterburn, and wisewolf.gold. That's where you go to get any of your questions on precious metals, gold and silver IRAs. If you want to know what an item you have is worth, we buy jewelry, we buy coins, bullion, bars from all over the country. We also deal in diamonds. So that's something. You go to wisewolf.gold and you can get a hold of me, and we have somebody answers the phone 24/7. I don't answer the phone 24/7, but it goes directly to me. So if you happen to call late at night, it will get answered. And we try to help anybody who calls. So always a pleasure to be on with you, Kenzie. We'll be back next week, folks, right here on aftermath.fm. Let's see if we can get a little tunes to play us out. Hold on a second. See if I can reverse this a little bit. We'll play some more Dire Straits. All right. In a world of fiat reality, the truth is solid gold, folks. We'll see you next time.